Welcome to Autistic People Talking, a podcast where autistic people talk. Hello, everyone. My name is Claire, and this is my channel, Woodshed Theory. Here, I make content about what it is like to live as an adult on the autism spectrum and whatever else feels good to me. So if that sounds good to you, or if you're feeling particularly gracious today, and I hope that you are, please go ahead and click the subscribe button, ring the bell. Hey everyone, welcome to the second episode of the highly regarded podcast, Autistic People Talking. And I would love to welcome you today, our special guest, Thomas Henley, YouTube star. Welcome, Thomas.
Okay, wait on the way to becoming a YouTube star, maybe. That's probably a better way of
Things have
describing
picked
it.
up
But
for you. I've been watching. Things have picked up.
I'm giving it a good go. I'm not doing too bad today, actually. Just my sort of gym schedule at the moment's been a bit different because I usually go with my dad. So I'm a little bit sort of dysregulated because my routines, sort of the days are switched around, but I'm
I
not doing
hate
too
that.
bad.
I should implement more routines in my life. And then that makes me nervous because I have OCD.
Mm.
So I think about like routines and then I get scared about going back into a life where like everything was routines and then I would panic if I couldn't do it. So
That's it's an interesting thing that you brought up because actually, like before we sort of hopped on this call, I was writing the scripts for my well, not the scripts, like the presentation slides for my next video, which is on routine. Um, and I completely empathize with you because, like, although being in a routine can be sort of brings a certain degree of like certainty or like emotional stability, at the same time, in order to get yourself into that routine, you need to make changes, and changes are
yeah,
hard.
I remember being in therapy, probably not with it. I mean, the therapist wasn't licensed yet. It was in college, like one of those deals where you go and they're
Mm.
like, have the students talk to you. And I mean, maybe she was. I can't remember. I was talking about trying to get more routine in my life, and she didn't know that at the time I had like a whole OCD routine about going to bed. And she was like, maybe you should try a routine for going to bed. And I just had like a panic attack in the middle of the meeting. And she's like, well, maybe not. Maybe you don't have a routine for that yet. Um, Gee, I think about the years and years and years I went to get help and nobody diagnosed me. And I just think how different life could have been, I guess.
How does your OCD sort of? Because I'm quite interested because I have someone in my life um who sort of has some difficulties when it comes to OCD. I know there's quite a big crossover with autism in terms of both the prevalence and also some of the traits as well.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering, like, how does that like impact your routine in that way?
Not as much anymore. I'd say I'm since going through um treatment, and it's been several years now. Um I'm in like the 80 to 90% better realm. Like I don't have
Mm.
it's not taking up as much headspace as it used to. It's hard to say because like when you're in the middle of being sick, like it was hard to reflect on what was actually happening to me.
Mm.
I would say it was just a lot of mind noise all the time.
Yeah.
So it was hard to get anything done w- with the constant intrusive thoughts. It's just very, very distracting. Like it's,
Mm. Is it
I mean,
kind
I
of like
guess
you have sort of when you're thinking about the things that you have to do in a day, that your sort of thoughts about what, like, all the things that you have to do are just constantly like bombarding you, like in one particular space until you get them done? Or is that
no, I'd say that sounds more like, yeah, I'd say it's more like the constant intrusive thoughts. It's like, just really, what's the word I'm looking for? It's super intense and super, bothersome,
Mm.
stressful, traumatic. Because it's like once you think the thought, then you can't get it out of your head, and then you're trying to, like, do mental gymnastics to get it out of your head. So, I think I was more stressed about calming the thoughts than I was about getting stuff done, and if anything, like, getting the stuff done was more of a distraction to me. But I
Sure.
did find that as soon as I got help, started the medication at the time, and, um, I just had hours in the day that I didn't have before. Yeah, I would say for anyone who really deals with, like, I hate having to say, like, real OCD because I know that, some I know that people have, different thoughts on, like, what it actually is. It's I wouldn't wish it on anybody. It's awful, and having to carry it around with you all the time, and especially if you haven't gotten help and it just gets heavier and heavier and
Mm.
you're not sure how the rest of your life is gonna play out because of it, awful. But enough about me, Thomas. We brought you here to talk about you. So, why don't you, introduce yourself a little bit now that we're how many minutes in? Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about, who you are, a little bit about, your autism journey and, like, where you're at now. That'd be awesome.
Sure. Um, so I'm Thomas Henley, and I
Welcome.
am an autistic speaker. I do some public speaking events and training for workplaces and organizations, particularly from more of a lived experience perspective, which is blended in with my experiences as a biomedical scientist, as a teacher, also from obviously being a part of the autistic community for a long time. I also produce a lot of videos over on YouTube, whether it be like presentations, streams. I do a lot of Instagram posts and reels and pretty much do like a little bit of everything. I'm very much trying to set myself up as being self-employed at the moment. So very much in a transitory stage in my life, which has been difficult, but it's slowly starting to be realized into a consistent schedule, and I'm feeling a little bit better about what I can handle and what I can do and such. In terms of my autism journey, I was diagnosed when I was 10 years old, and as I've sort of been watching like other content creators online, it does very much seem that like a lot of content creators that I've seen are kind of like late diagnosed. I don't really see many individuals who are sort of diagnosed earlier in life, and
What would you
I get a
call
lot
it?
of questions.
Mid-diagnosed? Because you weren't like
Yeah, yeah,
you weren't the 4-year-old boy, so
no, no.
mid-diagnosed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Early compared to late diagnosis, I suppose. Yeah, middling, middling age diagnosis. um,
The
but
Hobbit
yeah,
of
I mean,
diagnosis.
indeed, indeed, indeed. And I've experienced a lot of difficulty in my life, particularly coming from mental health when I was diagnosed with quite severe depression and anxiety and dissociative disorders when I was a teenager up until sort of my early adulthood, my 20s. Had a lot of difficult experience in that sense, a lot of good things as well. I competed in Taekwondo for a large part of my life and went to a really good university to study, made a documentary, um, done lots of different things in terms of like traveling and, you know, more or less trying to experience little pieces of life through my own way.
How do you feel, life changed for you? I mean, I guess it would have a lot to do with, like, how your parents were treating you and your
Mm,
accommodations, but did anything change after you were diagnosed at 10? Like,
mm.
what changed for
So
you?
it's a good question. Um, Yeah, quite often I hear from individuals who are late diagnosed, saying, "Oh, it was been so great to have that support, like
I don't think so,
in
but go ahead.
in earlier in life." No, I'm not saying yourself, of course, but that might be something
It
that
could
some
have
people
it could
think.
have
But
been like, guess what? Thank you,
yeah,
bye. That's how it is when you're late diagnosed. It's like, okay, you're diagnosed, and you're like, okay, what next? They're like, okay, thank you, bye. Take the bill at the
mm.
door.
It was actually very, very similar to that. There wasn't really anything that changed from me being diagnosed autistic, other than my parents' ability and my ability to sort of self-advocate
Mhm.
based on the knowledge that I was autistic. For things like, think probably the epitome of the support that I got was being able to leave class in order to regulate in like a safe space. That was pretty much the only thing that I can really think of. I didn't get like a personal PA or like any sort of very wide sort of changes because the school didn't really see it necessary due to my academic performance. And
Right. So the academic performance never was really the issue then.
no, no.
Cool, cool. And what about when you got to college age? I'm sure a lot of people listening would like to hear about that
Mhm.
because you knew that you were on the autism spectrum. Did
Mm.
that affect how you approached college, university?
I think it started to sort of affect how I approached it, maybe midway or late into my university degree.
Hmm.
The thing is that I only really understood autism as struggling with social and sensory things and perhaps meltdowns. I didn't really understand exactly what differences there were. I didn't understand sort of the emotional components. Um, I wasn't really aware of it, and for the most of my time in secondary school or for university, even it was sort of not really delved into very much. Like it was always in the back of my mind, and I knew that it was there as something that's part of me. Um, but it was only sort of during university that I started to understand it more. Sort of join the autistic communities, do more research. I started my channel during that time. I also started my podcast sort of in the last year of university there. Obviously, like disability support was good. I did get some adjustments when it came to exams and such. And
Mm.
I had one particular person at the university in the student support office who helped me in sort of tricky situations. But I'd say that the largest difficulty that I had um, was obviously like the transitioning to adulthood from sort of a very stable routine where I'm around people and I know what I'm doing and sort of my food and stuff are sort of taken care of, to a university setting where I was living on my own, living around people, and I became very, very isolated for a couple of years during that time.
Were you
That was
living in
probably when,
student housing or?
yeah, yeah, um, student housing, pretty much, yeah, every sort of year that I spent, um, and it was okay. I mean, I think the issue was is that I just really didn't understand how to like find friends, or I was quite interested in trying to find like a girlfriend and stuff around that time as well. So I didn't really understand how to go about dating and like meeting new people, and that was probably the biggest piece of the issues that I had. Um, Obviously, the deadlines, managing all of those, and understanding the very indirect wording of exam papers
Oh,
was quite difficult.
sorry. Obviously, I felt that in my soul. I really struggled. I did an MPhil at Cambridge, which is like a 1-year master's program. And the entire situation was so different than um, my experience doing other degrees. I just wasn't doing well. Now, I don't know how if it's like this at other universities in, the UK, but at Cambridge, it's like they don't want you to work more than unless you're a graduate student, you
Mm,
can work like 5 hours a week tops. Um, they don't want you to worry about, like, some of the colleges is, like, they would do like, come and change your bedding. They would come and do your laundry. They would clean your room for you, and I was like, "This is very strange because this is not how we do things in America." And I don't think other universities must do that. Is that
mm.
right? Or
No.
so
I had
weird. Yeah.
catered accommodation for the first year, but no, nothing in terms of cleaning and things of that nature.
It's just so interesting because like, that is not the accommodations I needed at the time are so different than, like, help me keep my room clean. Like, I really needed help navigating because, like, in our program, it was very much so, there were no there was no rules, like, it was up to you to set your own schedule. Um,
Mm,
you could literally not like, everything was based on, like, the final sit-down exam or the final paper. So you could do nothing, and, like, having to police myself into, like, when do I study and when do I work on papers, like, I just could not do it, and I almost
yeah,
failed because I just, like, couldn't like, the idea of, like, having to like, from the beginning, having to police myself through and know when to do things and know when to be studying and how to study. No, those were the accommodations that I needed, and I had no idea what I was doing. So, once you got out of school, like, how long have you been out of school?
jeez, I don't know.
3 weeks or
uh, probably a while. 4 or 5 years, maybe,
okay.
maybe, yeah,
To
I think
me,
so.
that was, like, the hardest transition of, I just kept getting degrees because I didn't know what to do. So, I was like, "I'll figure it out."
My
Um,
friend is like that, so
yeah, so, like, what did afterwards, I found that to be the hardest transition of, like, what is my I mean, because if college is, like, taking the wheels off, then, like, adult life afterwards is insane. So, like, what was that like for you, that transition?
I found university to be quite stressful. It was a lot better than secondary school, but like I didn't particularly enjoy being at university beyond
Mhm,
sort of the first year. So I was looking forward to sort of moving into adulthood, and I'd say that the transition is probably quite easy. Um,
mhm,
I think one piece that I didn't really delve into too much is that I did sort of a year abroad in Thailand,
cool.
studying mosquitoes. So I had a little bit of a sort of break from studies, sort of in between those, and obviously it was kind of like a job. Um, so I did that stuff. I mean, there wasn't really much difference. I mean, moving to adulthood other than finding a job.
Okay. Um, so tell me a little bit about why you decided to like, when did you decide to start a YouTube channel and why?
I started in my second year, which was probably second year uni, which was like probably the worst time of my life. The worst sort of, yeah. I was in not a very good place. I was very sort of socially isolated and such. And my YouTube channel was initially started in order to share my experiences, primarily just to share my experience. Over time, it sort of melded because I did a lot of personal writings and research and all sorts of different things in order to in sort of akin to like self improvement or increasing my understanding of myself. And after a while, it's slowly turned from me sharing my experiences to me offering like advice and
Mhm.
obviously like trying to tailor it in order to help other people in similar situations to what I've experienced.
So you've had a channel now for what, like So maybe like 6 years.
Yeah, about 7 years, I think. So,
Okay. Yeah, well, actually, in my freshman year of university, I I had a very small channel with where I did like 5 videos with a friend, and at the time, YouTube was new. It must have been in like
mm,
what YouTube started in '06, so this must have been like '07. It was like new and trendy. So I remember like we could post a video and be on like the top 100
wow.
vlogs because there were only there weren't there were only 200 vlogs, so you could really
Yeah.
crack it. Yeah, it's really hard to get into YouTube, but now it's kind of your channel is more evolved into doing the live streams and reviews,
Mm,
and I know that you stream gaming sometimes. So can you speak to that? Like why have you kind of gone in that direction, and what do you like
mm.
about that?
I think I suppose I've always wanted to branch out into different areas. Like I did a lot of live streaming on my Instagram for quite a while, and I started to find it a lot easier than I thought I would find it. Obviously I started with my podcast, and that introduced me to speaking to other people for long periods of time. And there was only sort of a small adjustment that I needed to make in order to stream. I just had to be the sole person who was talking,
Mhm.
and that interact with people, obviously, who are messaging. But I think one of the reasons why I wanted to start the streaming is because I don't really see it very much.
I think it makes
It's
definitely differentiates you from other autistic YouTubers for sure.
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily in that way of it trying to be a sort of a differentiation. Like there is an aspect of that, but it's a lot to do with, I don't know. I feel like I can be myself a lot more when I'm doing that kind of longer form content. Like there's not as much pressure in order to kind of really sort of perfect a video. I very much try and stay away from scripting because I just find that I mask heavily, and I really want as much as I can, much time as I am on the internet to be myself and
Mhm.
not have to think about that kind of stuff. And I think, you know, if people can sort of see, but whether it's podcasts or whether it's streams, I think if people, other autistic people, can sort of somewhat see what like an openly autistic person who is unmasked is like, or like in that sense, it kind of makes it a bit more, perhaps a bit more relatable, or like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of why, but I've got it kind of in my head. I just haven't fully sort of like
Oh, that's okay.
created it into
Do
speech.
you enjoy the immediate feedback aspect of it as well, like the interacting with people?
Yeah, I definitely do. Yeah, it's everyone that usually comes to my live streams are pretty fun, and good to be around, and they usually offer a lot of insights into different areas, which I always love to hear. And even when I do get some people who are particularly sort of negative or like insulting or like annoying, it's kind of funny to me. Like it just makes me laugh. It doesn't like upset me or anything. So yeah, it's I really do like having that aspect, and also it gives me an excuse to, obviously learn from other people's experiences, or learn about more aspects of autism through other people that I watch as well,
I think
like yourself.
yeah, oh, thanks. If you're on YouTube, you have to come to a point where you have to start laughing at the negative or you have to leave. Like because it's like it happens. The other day I got a comment, it was like, God, this girl is so annoying. And I'm like, why are you here? You could just leave. Like, all right,
I
like
don't
that's fine.
mind that stuff.
Yeah, I
That
don't
stuff's
like I don't
okay.
necessarily mind it either, but it's like, how did my spouse put it? Like why put the energy in then? If like I watch people sometimes, I mean, just, you know, I think we all do where we're like, this is not my cup of tea. Like this is not the person I vibe with. It's not the video I want to watch. It never crosses my like if anything, I'm like, if I even think about like, oh, how should I let them know? I'm like, I shouldn't. Like who has the time for that? Like if I'm not into what somebody on YouTube is doing, I can just go. I did kind of want to shift and talk about your special interests because obviously, uh, health, working out, all of that is a special interest of yours. Like, when did that evolve into what it is now? I mean, I know you were talking about, is it biomedics that you got your degree in?
Yeah, it's like reset, the kind of the reset side of medicine,
Okay.
basically, human science.
So how did that evolve into personal health, or has that always been something that you're into?
Well, there's lots of different aspects to it, and there's sort of a neuroscience aspect to it, and obviously a lot to do with like physiology and anatomy that I did a lot of modules on. Um, but I have a long history of like sport and fitness and exercise. You know, ever since I was very young, I've always been sort of pushed to try new things, and a lot of those things tended to be fit like sports and social groups and things like that.
Yeah, you're
Um,
like a world champion. Am I right?
maybe not world champion, but British champion in
Country
Taekwondo I
champion.
was. Yeah. Um, competed for Great Britain at a couple of events. Commonwealth gold probably being the biggest one, but I think it's more of a UK sort of thing rather than US thing. Um, so yeah, I did that for a while, and I had a big interest in physical education. I did an A level in it, which is kind of like a step, like the lowest qualification in the UK is like GCSE, and
Hmm.
then you have A level, and then you have degree. So I did it for a GCSE. I did pretty well on it, and when I moved to doing it in A level, I really enjoyed it to the point where I started to research it myself, just for, because of my interests. And I'd quite often sort of go to my teachers after class and ask them about particular sort of pieces of research around exercise. Um,
As one
and they
does.
wouldn't know what I was talking about.
I would
um,
be like that in my language courses as well. Like I'd be like raising my hand and be like, is that particular thing, does that have to do with this ancient rule and the Canaanite shift? And they would be like, sure, sure.
yeah, exactly. But I did pretty well in that A level, and I got like the highest mark in the school history. I think it was like 139 out of 140. They used my like exam paper as a like an example for like new students. um, but I didn't really want to go into it because I've always had like two different aspects of my life. Like I've always had to I can't just have like one passion. I need to have like
Hmm.
at least two. And it's usually either sport or exercise, and it's my job. So like at the moment it's like YouTube. And I didn't sort of follow up with my taekwondo because I experienced a lot of discrimination within the
Mm,
sport. Um, and I just found that it wouldn't be a very sort of mentally okay lifestyle for me to become sort of a full-time athlete
hmm.
just because of that environment. And nowadays I am very much into like bodybuilding and strength training, and it's good for me because it gives me that outlet. It helps a lot with my mental health and stress. It gives me some focus time, allows me to sort of exert myself and get all my energy out before I sleep. Um, and it's good for me because I like to work on something. Like anything
Mm.
that I do, there's always got to be some greater like goal that I'm striving for, and the sort of the progression of my sort of physique and my strength on exercises, it kind of helps me feel like I'm moving forwards in life, and even if I'm struggling like in the other aspects.
And you mentioned that you do a lot of that with your dad. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I give him PT sessions basically. Well, I'm not a PT, but I basically train him. Um,
Well, it's one of those things I'm sure where it's like you're not, but you've done enough research that you kind of are. Not you're unqualified, but more
yeah,
qualified.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the same with the autism stuff. It's like I don't have an autism qualification or like a psychology degree or anything, but I think people can appreciate when you understand about things, and with YouTube being available, like especially when it comes to fitness and exercise and nutrition, there is a wealth of information out there from like the world's best coaches, and it's just about researching and understanding it over time.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm sure you found that to be true as well, where if you have an autistic special interest in something, and then somebody's like, let me let me explain it to you, and you're like, okay, don't go into it. Don't go into it. Like, just let them speak. It's totally fine. Like, they're not asking for a complete lecture, or like, don't don't correct them. Don't correct them. Don't correct them. You're just sitting there
Mhm.
like the eye twitch starts. Oh, I guess that's a great question to ask you, if you don't mind moving to another topic.
Sure.
How do you, I know you mentioned that both the health aspect, working out, bodybuilding, is one of your special interests, and then the other one is YouTube, social media, your business, which I can completely relate to. But I find that I find your ability to balance different platforms very inspiring, because it's something that I really struggle with. Like, how have you found um, how have you found a way to balance doing Instagram and YouTube and streaming,
Mm.
and like is there like some sort of routine you have in place, or what does that look like for you?
Well, I don't mind going through my routine, but it's with the sort of short videos and the posts, I tend to have a week during the month where I just produce that content.
Mhm.
Then I'll have like 1 week during the month where I'll sort of create, edit, and film the 4 videos that I'm going to put out.
Mhm.
And every week I'll have like a day where I edit my stream videos
Right,
and
yeah. I
put them
noticed that
out.
you do that. You'll put out you'll do the stream and then cut it down into pieces and then put it out as videos, correct?
Yes, very very lazy sort of way of doing YouTube, I would say. But
I don't think so. I talk to Ryan Kelly a lot, and he's like, just be chopping up your videos and putting them out as shorts, basically. Like,
oh yeah, mm.
yeah, it's like,
Opus clips is
work
what I
smart.
use for
Yeah,
that.
work smarter, not harder. And it's so interesting because I don't know if it's that my brain doesn't work like that, but I just I never think about stuff like that. Or I never think that there are like tools out there to help me. I'm just like in my own world trying to figure out like, how do I make this work? Um, so yeah, like
No,
for Instagram, is it the same where you just have like a day during the week where you work on that, or?
I do that, and I do all of my Instagram stuff, my posts and my reels and things like that in a week, 1 week during the month, and then I schedule it out for YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. and
Wow.
they just go out sort of on when I schedule them for.
What do you
It's
use
probably one
to
of the more
schedule them, like
stressful.
Hootsuite or
I use Metrical at the
okay,
moment.
I'm gonna write it down.
I've only recently done that, but for the clips that I make from my streams and my podcasts, my short videos, I use Opus clip generator, and both of those things are paid. It's kind of one of those, things that if I want to continue doing what I like the most, which is long form content, I've got to like find ways to sort of churn out the short form content in order that I can get some more reach.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that. And I just think it's so interesting because I don't think I realized either that because so many of the YouTube, Instagram, like all the socials have moved into the short form content.
Mm,
Like, if you want to reach people, you need to make short form content. Like the
I
long
hate short form
form
content.
pardon?
I hate it. I hate short
Right.
form. It's you've got at one end you've got people who can just absolutely like the kind of the more fast talking kind of to the point speakers, and they just seem to just be able to work the short form content so well. Then you have people like me who like having 2 hour long podcast episodes, which is completely the opposite. So it's like, even if I chop up my long form content, I'm still not, it's still not like exactly the same as like others who do that short form stuff really well.
And don't you feel, I don't know if you feel this way, but I'm very much the kind of person who feels like if you put the work in and you work really hard, then you'll see the return. And that's what's rewarding. But then I'll be having a rough day, so I just like hop on, make a short where I'm like, how do you feel about this? 7, 8,000 views later, I'm like, this is what got 8,000 views, not the video I spent so much time on. It's like
Yeah.
it's like not it doesn't one does not equal the other. Like I that is frustrating to me because you put all this work in and have these ideas and do all this editing and make it look nice and you know 10 people watch it for 30 seconds. Uh
No,
that frustrate you as
I can
well?
empathize. Yeah, well, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's like a lot of the time, it's not necessarily the quality of the information that you're putting out, and it's more how good you are at delivering said information in short form content.
And do you ever find that
And
the videos that you put out where you are like, that's it, top content I've ever put out, that gets the least amount of love. And then the video where you're like, I'm so sick of this. I'm just gonna put a video out and it's just gonna be me and it's whatever. That's the video where people are like, thank you so much. This is so helpful. This is the best
I,
content you've ever made.
I haven't really um done that stuff really. I don't know. It's I have to find some way of like batch making it, or else I just won't do it.
I
So
see.
I can't. I mean, I could do. I've tried doing those kind of talky kind of videos, but I find that a lot of the stuff that seems to do well um, tends to be like personal experiences or
Hmm.
personal things that people have shared about themselves. And like I don't mind talking about myself, but I don't find myself that like I'm not saying that people who do that are finding themselves that interesting, but like
I completely
I
understand
just
what you're saying because I feel
I
like
just
if
it's
if
like
you
it's just
start
me.
editing yourself, you're like, I didn't realize how boring I was. I'm really boring. Like if you start watching yourself on a video, I feel like that all the time where I'm like, this is terrible. Like who would watch this?
I like ideas. I like concepts. I don't like necessarily enjoy sharing my experiences like I used to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it's also because I quite like to have some level of separation, because although I am like pretty much the same, like if you get me on a podcast or you get me on a video, or like there might be some differences, but I'm pretty much like the same person in the way that I present in all of those fashions, and the same in real life. But um I like to talk about those concepts and ideas, and I don't particularly like to share my experiences because I don't know, it kind of it makes me somewhat more maybe personally or emotionally invested in how people respond, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like or like I have experiences where I share how I think and how I feel, and those things tend to be the ones that attract the most sort of negativity from others,
Yeah.
because you talk about your experience, um, people assume that that's just as impactful as giving people advice or saying something generally about like autism, whereas it's just me talking about my experience. But people, if that makes sense, like
Yeah, no,
they
I feel
assume
like
that
too
you're
you have to
trying
give
to
so
like
many caveats about like I hate having to be like because in the comments it'll be like, well, I'm not like that
yeah.
and I'm autistic. And it's like, I'm sorry. Do I every video and I love the people who watch my videos, but it's like I just because they're not watching every video, they don't hear me always saying like I'm just one autistic person. It's just me. This is what I'm talking about. So you don't mention it in a video and it's like, well, or everything you say, you know, like oh, most autistic people dot 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 and they're like, well, I'm not like that. And it's like, okay, I should have said not every single person, maybe you're different. But you don't want to have to say that every time. Um, yeah, that gets difficult, and I completely understand what you're saying about
People also disagree with your experiences, which I find to be
right. Yeah.
wild. Like, you know, it's like,
That's not how you were feeling, Thomas.
yeah, exactly. It's like, it's mad. I mean, I know probably another aspect of like content creation that I find particularly hard, which I bring upon myself probably, is talking about the things that a lot of people don't want to talk about. Like
Hmm.
there's stuff that is like pretty difficult to cover and perhaps quite negative, um, in some respects. I do definitely bring that on myself, but I think when you try to open up a dialogue about things, people sort of there are some people out there who um, sort of categorize you as being bad just because you're talking about it. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point to bring up because we haven't really, especially if people who are watching or listening, we haven't really brought up that you do a lot of reaction videos.
mm, mm,
Um, even when you're live streaming, you do a lot, most of, or I don't know if I'd say most of, but a lot of what you do is react to other people's work. And you react to some videos where I'll be watching your live stream and I'm like, how is he reacting to this right now? Because it is either it's really heavy or it's people who are misspeaking,
mm.
but you're able to keep like I highly recommend that people check out your work because you're able to really keep an even keel through the entire thing where you're like, I kind of get like, and you're very good at like saying like, I get where they're coming from, but they're wrong. And I'm like flipping tables watching where I'm like, this is crazy. How could they say this? And you're just like, I think you have a real talent for reaction videos.
Thank you.
How did you kind of make the decision to get into that? I think it's a good way, the reaction videos is it's a good way to bring up topics, hard topics.
Yes. I think one of the reasons why I started to wanted to do streaming is because um, with my sort of plan for my work, and and such. Like I definitely want to, like, my sort of my channel, or like my page, or like anything that I do, I always try and highlight that like everybody is welcome. And it
Hmm.
doesn't, like, I very much want to do a lot of, I guess you could call it like outreach work, maybe,
Yeah,
sort of um
advocacy.
engaging with mainstream things
Hmm.
from my perspective, I suppose, and sort of inserting a bit of, lived experience, and sometimes some, facts and sort of knowledge about autism. I think because there is such a prevalence out there in the mainstream of people using autism, or people reacting to autism related stuff, I feel like to some degree I need to, I mean, yeah, at some degree I need to like confront it, I guess, in order to be sort of engaging with the mainstream. And you know,
Right.
um,
It's important to be part of the conversation and not just being the
mm,
part being talked about.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I do cover some pretty annoying people, put it lightly. Cover some really annoying people, who are very sort of ignorant and such. Which, I kind of understand that. I think it's just, I think, as in order for us to improve the life quality of autistic people, and to um, sort of have a bit more of that societal kind of backing for social change, I think we do need to draw upon groups which are outside of us, because we're a very small group in comparison to the rest of the world. And
Right.
we do need support by neurotypical individuals, holistics. And in order to get that support, they need to like understand like things, or they need to somewhat relate, I guess. Like
I find that the biggest part of our demographic that I don't know how you feel about this, but um, I find the biggest part of our demographic that I'm personally missing is I'm not I'm autistic, but I'm not an autistic parent.
hmm,
I would say that a lot of the audience um, for autistic content is autistic people who are parenting autistic children. So, what I'm left with, or what we're left with, is uh, autistic people who are kind of trying to find their place in the world. And that isn't the biggest audience that there could be. Um, but I will say this, they're the most loyal, wonderful, and supportive audience that you could ever have. Like there really isn't like I look at other YouTube communities, and sometimes there's like a lot of drama and negativity, and I don't necessarily see that in, I don't know what we'd call it, autism tube.
yeah. I mean,
Is
you
that
definitely get that on Instagram and Reddit and Twitter, and it's very apparent, sort of, I suppose, in those spaces. Um, I suppose, like, I think it's probably because like a lot of YouTube content, it doesn't tend to be like heavily socially socio-political.
mm-hmm,
It tends to be a lot more based on like experiences and life and traits, and like the actual sort of individual things that we experience. But there is some people out there who do tackle things similarly. I know that I'm Autistic Now What does a lot of videos, which sort of engage sort of with the socio-political side of things. But I
Meg?
think when it comes to that stuff, it tends to be, um, have the potential of, drama and sort of contrary opinions, sort of
Yeah, I
spurring
find
people to.
Meg is very brave on that, and I will say, just for everyone listening, we're scheduling. I'm in the midst of trying to schedule Meg for the
Ah,
podcast.
cool.
So that's coming. Um, it's just you'd be I think no one would be surprised to know that autistic people trying to schedule themselves to be on each other's podcasts is not the easiest. Is it like herding cats? Is that the phrase? I'm not very good at phrases. Um, and I
Yeah,
love cats, but
from both
it's
sides.
hard to get us pinned down because it's like somebody's in burnout or not that this is what's happening with Meg, but it's like we're all trying to be the healthiest versions of ourselves and like
Mm,
trying to like pin people down to a specific time to have a conversation. It's not the easiest thing.
mm. 100%, 100%. It's one of those things. It's probably why I'm pivoting a little bit more towards doing content on my own.
Hmm.
I really enjoy doing podcasts, but I think that sort of organization element of it um, is hard when you're trying to like establish yourself a routine because it doesn't always work out that way, and people have different time zones. People, as you said, have bad days and don't want to understandably put themselves out there on the internet when they're
That's
not
okay. I
feeling
mean,
like.
I'll be the first to say, well, number one, this is a reschedule for us. And number two, when we were rescheduling, Thomas explicitly said, okay, next Monday works for me. And my brain read Tuesday. He said it couldn't, people listening, it could not be clearer. So yesterday I looked at it and I was like, how did I read Tuesday? Like he wrote Monday works and I went, "Okay, great. I scheduled you for Tuesday." That was I'm like talking to my spouse about it. I'm like, "How did it happen? Like this is crazy." Uh and my spouse was like, "Yeah, not very professional." And I'm like, "I know." So thanks for
I
being
think
flexible, Thomas.
no, at least I think it's important, and you will get some people out there who kind of get a bit like I suppose like some people take it in a very sort of negative way as like, sort of the greater context is like, oh, you don't really sort of value me as a
Right,
guest or
that's what
like,
I was worried about, like,
yeah.
you thinking that I just did it, like, I don't care what you
No,
said,
no, no, no.
and,
It's
that was really embarrassing.
no,
Uh,
I think we if we are like engaging with each other, I think we're, always kind of remembering that life can sometimes be very difficult and stressful, and there's a lot of, organizations difficult for a lot of us sometimes.
yeah, and I
um
think that's probably one of the best parts about working with each other as autistic people is at least there's an understanding there,
mm.
whereas
Yeah, it can go the other way though. Like some people can get upset because like they had something in their brain they were going to do it at this
exactly.
time, and then like, oh no, it's like, oh please, like I've had a few people who have been like that, and I just can't like there needs to be like some level of mutual understanding. But
Right.
you know sometimes I just can't podcast, and that's something to do with my autism, and as well like yourself, it's some it's going to be somewhat annoying if your routine gets messed up because of me, and it's like
Well,
you
nothing
just
triggers an autistic person like another autistic person.
yeah, I suppose in some ways, yeah, I suppose.
It's not on purpose either, it's just like, I've heard before, it's like, um, if you have, like, high sensory needs, as many of us do, and somebody's doing something that's, like, against
Verbal
maybe
stimuli.
their stim is not something that your senses can handle, um,
Yeah.
it's hard yeah, it's hard to be understanding. Um, I found that being in the autism community has just made me a much more, like, gracious and understanding person because
Mm,
I know that I have needs, so I have to remember that other people have needs as well.
totally.
So if I have to step out and, put myself right, then I just have to do that.
You have to it's not all it's not I don't think it's the most optimal sort of most comfortable job for autistic people. That's for sure. Like, I think there are some aspects to it, but like the organization, the communication, the um, you know, sort of the pressure to sort of stick to a schedule, I think it can be quite overwhelming. Um, and then that's not even considering like the aspects of engaging with people a lot or talking a lot on camera and sort of eating into your social battery
Hmm.
using through work as well. Um, it's definitely not the easiest, but you know,
I think it's a
it's
lot easier than having to do it in person, though.
yeah, that's true.
Like
That's
what
true.
how do you handle knowing that thousands of people like watch your videos a day? I for one just pretend that they're not.
I suppose like I've had like I've done live streams with people and stuff before, and they say like, or like people meet me in person and they're like, oh, like I know you from YouTube or I know you from some social media site, and I'm like, oh, that's weird. Okay,
Yeah.
like I suppose I don't really have a sense um to that. Like it's not really something that I think about, and I don't know. I'd say I'm saying I'm a bit of a sucker for the camera. I like being in front of a camera, so I think that helps.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Were you like into like theater and stuff growing up or
Nope,
no?
not at all. I was incredibly shy and introverted for most of my life.
Yeah, I find it a really fulfilling way to build relationships. It gives
Yeah.
like a safety bubble around you, like a sensory bubble, and like you're in control of your sensory input. Like if you need to shut it off or not respond for a while, like you have that control. Whereas doing things in person, like it's a complete wild card. Like anything could happen.
Yeah. I mean, I have like most of my social experience has been sort of in groups with like I definitely have in the past been stereotypically extroverted.
Hmm.
Um but only when I'm used to it. It's very strange. Like if I don't go out or I don't see people like for a while and then I go out, it's hard. But if I don't know, I take like 2 or 3 weeks off work and I have a lot of socializing and stuff to do. I do get into a rhythm with that as well. Um, I suppose it's like one of my special interests for a long time. Probably the reason why I started trying to understand autism is because I was very interested in people who weren't autistic. And so I've, somewhat become like a neurotypical whisperer. a
Interesting.
little bit, a little
You could
bit,
hire
trying
yourself out.
to.
Like what it's like, can you possibly uh, interpret for me? It's so
Mm.
interesting because I was doing the Love on the Spectrum reaction videos, and
Oh,
there was this one date that happened, and the neurotypicals in the comments were like, he was pretty clear that he didn't like her. He was really clear about that. This was clear because, and I'm like, it was? It was clear to who? He said maybe. So isn't that what he meant? So I totally get that because it's like there are times I feel like I'm pretty good at interpreting, but then when push comes to shove, I take everything extremely literally, you know?
mm. I'm good at doing that. I just choose not to nowadays. Like just as part of me advocating for my own sort of communication style and liking being autistic, I suppose, and unmasked, I guess. I don't really do as much of that anymore. Like I obviously in the instant, if I'm just meeting somebody, then I will, but I very much try and transition it to something that feels more natural to me.
Mhm.
Like, you know, it can.
How long do you
So,
feel like, do you feel like, the idea of, like, unmasking and being your true self, is that more of, like, a new idea for you in the past few years, or is it something that you've always tried to do since your diagnosis?
um, I in my early life, I didn't mask at all, because I wasn't really interested in people.
Mhm.
um, so I didn't do it a lot. I didn't do it a lot during school. I didn't mask. I compensated, um, which is under like the social camouflage kind of umbrella. But the way that I compensated was just by shutting off and not really interacting. Um,
Right.
but when I got into university, I started masking a lot to
Same.
make friends and to date and to, do all that kind of stuff. And it's only after university I sort of realized how negative it was for me. And I started to, I guess, just be myself. And like, there's a lot of things that people get wrong about unmasking. They think it's going to be like great in all areas, but most people I talk to as my unmasked self don't particularly like me. Or they don't get on with me, or they kind of get this weird vibe from me just because of like my processing delays and stuff. Um, but I'm okay with it, like,
Yeah.
because it kind of weeds out people who make like initial harsh judgments, based on very little information,
Right.
and it allows me to find people who are perhaps a bit more sort of curious and open-minded to be
Mm.
around.
Just to wrap up here, first of all, thank you for being on the podcast and being the second
Of course,
ever
Claire.
guest. Um, Anything that you'd like the viewers to know about what's coming up for you or what they should check out on your channel? Thomas does have a really amazing documentary that he's made that you should go check out. I'll try and remember to link it down below. And all of his YouTube channel will be linked all over the place. So definitely go and check those out. But yeah, why don't you let us know what's coming up for you?
It's coming up for me. I do have I did an interview for Autism Parenting Mag, which will I think come out during Autism Awareness
Whoa.
Month or week, which is pretty fun. Talking about like transitions to adulthood. Um, I'm still working on my channel, and there's probably going to be like different styles of videos that are going to come out soon, which are kind of a bit more talking head. And we've got a few podcasts in the mix ready to go. Um, I do quite a lot, like most of the time. So there's always like new topics and things that I cover both on my Instagram page and my YouTube channel, particularly.
Well, everyone go check out Thomas. I think that you do a great job with your commentary and I appreciate your very
Thanks.
even-keeled approach to things. So even when I'm feeling like overwhelmed, like I like to put your videos on because they're very like calm. So if that's what you're into, definitely go and check out Thomas. Yeah, I'll go ahead and bid everyone farewell in that case. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you very much, Claire. See you later, guys.